Hello and welcome to episode 13 of Friends from Film School, a Sozo Bear podcast. I'm Luke Pilgrim.
I'm Brad Kennedy.
And I'm Ellis.
All right, so last time we talked, we left it saying we were going to chat about pre-production a little bit on this episode. So I guess we'll just jump right into that. Pre-production, Brad, what do you think? What should we start with? Budgeting or what would be the first step of pre-production?
Man, I feel like the first step when we typically move from the screenwriting phase to pre-production is take our script and then break it down to figure out how many days of filming it needs to be and kind of creating a shot list.
Yeah.
So, and really you decide, do you storyboard it? Do you just shot list it? Do you do both? Too.
So do you think you need to have an idea of your budget before the shot list at all, or could one affect the other?
For sure, I would say. I think you need to have a ballpark idea of how much you want to spend, or how much money you have available. And two, even in the screenwriting phase or whatever portion of pre-production, really early phases, you might be able to find people to help support it. Start thinking about doing crowdfunding, using something like Kickstarter, Seed and Spark. I think it's good to have like an idea, a rough estimate, but definitely I would say to do the shot list, scene breakdown, how many days of filming, and then you get into the specifics of the budget. Right?
So let's say I'm a aspiring young budding filmmaker, and I have just finished my script, but I do not know where to go from there. I have a dream, a credit card, and no idea what to do next.
Well, I would say personally, I would not max out a credit card to make a movie, especially a short film.
For sure.
Because short films, it's more about exposure, getting your name out there, getting to the point where you're making movies and have a resume and a portfolio, more so than being able to make money back on it, especially if you're spending like thousands of bucks.
Yeah, because you're most likely not going to make money on a short film. But what about, so we could almost do a whole thing on just how to do a successful crowdfunding campaign. So I don't want to get us too far off track, but just to touch on that for a second, we've done that a couple of times now. We did it for the Apology Service and for the most recent episode of Encounters, which was really kind of for the series of Encounters. I think as far as that goes, if you're thinking about doing a crowdfunding campaign, you just want to make sure you're extremely organized, make sure that this is something you're really passionate about, and that when you talk about it, other people can see that passion, and they can feel that passion, and they want to get on board with what you're doing because it seems exciting and it's something that they can tell that this is a dream of yours. That goes so far, man, when you're telling people about this stuff. And then you want to have a really solid lookbook or definitely video. Like when you're making your pitch video, make that video have the same tone of what you're going for, or the same vibe, the same colors, the same kind of, if you can do some like set design or have some renders, like drawings or something that look like a scene from the movie, storyboards, anything that can give people a visual understanding, because a lot of people at least are really
even if you're using stills from other movies,
exactly.
Like
we know Stranger Things, right? They did a whole like pitch video thing where they took 80s movies, edited them together to kind of make this pitch video when they were shopping their concept around.
I think too that when you go to a lot of like crowdfunding pages, a lot of people, like you were saying, just don't put in the effort to make the page itself look really like nice, like including images and like really breaking down everything, like step by step how you're going to do stuff. I think that having like concept art and stuff really goes a long way, not only in your pitch video but like in like the text and like everything that's like being broken down in like the actual page itself.
Because you got
like
you have to consider that you're asking people for their hard-earned money that they could spend on anything, and if you can't just expect someone to just hand over their money to you, without it's, you know what I mean. It's just like, even though you may be dealing with friends and family, but still you need to respect that relationship. That's another thing. Just, you don't want to tap everybody out all the time. Like, if you're continuously putting out GoFundMe's or Seed and Sparks or Kickstarters, people are not going to continue to support you, so you kind of have to do that sparingly, For us, it was several years between when we did our first one and when we did another crowdfunding, and now it's like we probably won't do one for a long time because we don't want to tap out our friends, family, and fan base,
Yeah, I think, to also piggyback on what you had said before, I think the more prepared you are and the more like work and preparation and just the overall presentation, think of it like it is like creating a business, and you're having to go to investors and say, this is what I'm planning to do. If you go to a bank and you're asking for a loan, they're going to ask for every reason why you should be given that loan, and don't just have your hand out and be like, more money please. It's like,
money please.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you want to prove to every single person, especially it's crowdfunding, so you're asking a crowd of people, oftentimes it is your family, your friends, or friends of friends, and if you have sort of built a fan base, it becomes those people. But yeah, you have to respect them. You gotta prove to them that you are worthy of giving, even if it is just $5 or $10 or $20. It's like, that's a lot of money. They could easily spend that on something else, and people aren't constantly going to crowdfunding websites and giving their money. Most of the time your audience are people who aren't already familiar with that world, so you gotta convince them, and just really in presentation more than anything, that you're going to make a really awesome film. And oftentimes I feel like people do it because they are supportive of you, and you want to, once you get into making that final movie, you're like, okay, I'm glad I did support them because this really turned out amazing.
Yeah.
You also need to make sure you're good on your promises.
Oh, for sure.
Or at least keep people updated. Like, you have to have incentives, because when people donate the amount they donate, they get some sort of incentive. Just make sure you keep those promises, and then you keep them informed. Yes. So that they don't feel like their money went to waste.
And keeping them informed too is part of just making them feel like they're part of the process, because that's a big reason why someone would be motivated to give. They want to be a part of this cool experience, because not everybody is out there working on movie sets every day, and you can get real jaded and used to it real quick. But to average everyday people who aren't seeing how they're not seeing that behind the scenes of how things are made, that's pretty exciting,
And if they have a good time or experience with the whole process, then they might be willing to donate to your next movie,
right?
If they really enjoyed their experience the first time. But if you kind of give them the cold shoulder, then they might not donate again. You might not make as much money for your next movie.
Right.
True. Okay.
Cool.
So yeah, I was about to say, jumping from that to actual pre-production. Pre-production is everything you're doing before you get to set, right? So you want to be the same as creating a Kickstarter or any type of crowdfunding, or going to ask people for donations to help fund your movie. You need to be prepared in that way, but you also need to be as prepared as you possibly can be before you go to set. So that includes, creating a shot list, figuring out the budget, how many days of filming it will take, storyboarding, anything like that.
Let's talk about the shot list and storyboards.
Okay.
I think we may have talked about this briefly before, but what's the difference? What is a shot list? What is a storyboard? And like, when do you need which one? What's the difference in those two? I know in the past we've done storyboards. We've had someone create really good storyboards for us before. And then we've kind of slowly switched to a more shot list based production. What are the pros and cons? I mean, I think one of the pros of having the storyboards is just so that people on set have an easier time understanding the shot you're trying to get.
Yeah. I think that's one thing is, like you said, we've transitioned to more just the shot list, and that's because, me and you, we've worked together for years now, so we kind of have developed this shorthand, and we kind of know exactly what we're talking about, you know. So even just in the way it's written, we've discussed it on in the office a lot, you know, and just talking, looking it over, you know, we know what we want. But yes, the storyboards does help anyone else on the crew, especially your gaffer, you know, all your lighting people. If you have a camera operator that's not, you know, one of the directors or people that is creating the shot list, you know, it helps them. And I think that probably starting out, I would recommend having a shot list or storyboard. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
To me, it feels pretty like undervalued, because like you as the director know how the shots are going to cut together, especially if you're editing, and you know the motive. You know what each shot's going to look like. You know what the framing's going to look like. But like you were saying, not everyone on the crew knows what's going on, and that can leave a lot of room for confusion. People coming to you constantly asking you like, okay, what's the next shot? What are we going to do here? And that storyboard, I feel like, helps alleviate that. And not only that, you can kind of see early on in pre-production what shots are going to work and what's not, and what's going to cut together and what's not.
Even for us personally, I mean, if we had the resources, I would say we should have storyboards, you know, all the time. It's just a matter of making them in advance, or who's going to draw them and make them. It does take a lot of time to draw those storyboards. Now, if you're starting out, you can make real basic stick figure type storyboards.
I was about to say the same thing.
Yeah, and you can get away with that, and that will give. But what you can do is give really detailed camera notes on there. Like if you want to push in, you know, draw
arrows.
You know, I used to draw like literal like 3D looking arrows so that I could understand the perspective of the fact that arrow is going forward. You know, or if that arrow is coming towards me. That way, the camera operator understands right away. You know, and you can. There's plenty of examples online. There's some really great ones. There's some, you know, you can look at famous, you know, your favorite movies from like Jurassic Park or whatever, on that where they've drawn these elaborate storyboards. And then you can develop a simplified version of that from there.
True. Yeah, I was going to say you don't have to have like Pixar level, you know, artistry in your storyboards. You know, it's awesome. You know, it's. People sometimes can do it, but that is a lot of time and effort. I know one thing that we've developed and even did for our first film, The Apology Service, was, you know, you were taking shots of me standing in for people or either photoshopped it in. So we kind of had, and we then, I forget, some filter threw it on, you know, and really pixelated it, kind of gave it a style, but made it where you could see the framing. You know, we took a lot of photos and a lot of test shots. We've even done that, you know, for pretty much everything since then, a lot of test footage.
I think I still have I'll send Ellis, if I can find them, I'll send you a couple of those frames, because they were actually pretty cool. It was literally like I spent a lot of time on it that probably wasn't necessary, but I mean, again, it was our first like kind of big experience making a movie, and our first movie together, really. But you know, like you said, I would photograph Brad in the scene. Sometimes it was like finding pictures of someone online, photoshopping them into the scene or whatever. Like one of them I remember was like over the shoulder of a guy at the door, and it was Ben Stiller in a scene. But it's like we knew the shot we needed, and I used that picture from online or whatever. And then it was this like cutout render like effect on Photoshop that made it all like real kind of artsy looking. But you know, we had those all taped up on a black piece of foam board on set.
I remember every day before getting to set, I would like tape up the day's shots, and I had them all in like baggies, and I would just take like 30 minutes of just setting them all up for that day, and then if we finish it, you know, you rip it off or whatever. That
was probably the most elaborate we've ever been with storyboards on set.
That's a nice motivator, though, you know?
Yeah.
For, like, the crew being able to see, like, how many shots are left, and it's like, okay, we got this many left.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Sunnyside, we had a really cool setup, too. Our intern at the time, Kristen, she's a very, very good artist, and she drew very, like, when I said Pixar level, like, that was the style and look of a lot of those storyboards, and those were really cool for Sunnyside, and we kind of did a similar thing. I think the fart formula was our first time of kind of transitioning more to the shot list, but we did a lot of test footage too. We knew we would record stuff and I would be acting it out. The dance scene in the hallway, I remember we were at Luke's parents' house and I'm just dancing like Ryan, walking down the hallway. We're testing out if a wheelchair would work to pull off that very long dolly, and that's actually what we used. But we then tested in the edit, so we could take even that stuff, and we've done that for encounters as well, both episodes, where it's like you almost take a screen grab of those. So it's like, even if you're not a great artist, I think you can still take photos, use whatever you can to set
very
up
good
shot
substitute
list.
Yeah, that was in one of my notes on here was like, and this is kind of later in the process, probably once you've actually found your locations, but doing that kind of like tech run, and you can like run through stuff at the location, film test shots there if possible. If not, you could film test shots like we did, like in your own bedroom, your own living room or whatever, and just practice the framing that you're trying to get.
Yeah.
Luke's house has probably been exhausted to the point that like,
oh yeah,
I don't think there's a corner in your house that hasn't been filmed in now.
I know. Other than maybe the bathrooms, but I guess if we start doing more skits, we can get some footage in there.
Yeah.
But then I guess the next step would be figuring out how many days of filming, right?
Yeah.
And I guess the process I typically go with on that is I take the script, I look at every scene heading and figure out, what shares the same scene heading. So if it's, John's living room, Tyson's backyard, and if that shows up multiple times, I'll start keeping a list of all those. And then anything, especially if you know where you're filming at, that kind of helps out. So, if you know that one location can also serve for several different scenes, then you piece them together. And a good rule of thumb, and this is something I think we've learned the hard way, is don't overload how many scenes you try to get a day. Oftentimes we've done that where it becomes very, jam-packed, and you're just having to rush through things, and you're not getting as much takes and as much attention on scenes as you would like to, because you're trying to stay on schedule.
Yeah, because it's that balance of budget versus what you can actually achieve, and it's like, if possible, it's like stretch out your number of days of filming and try to. I know that when we were really a lot of times breaking down our shot list, we were like, we'd kind of like break it down, and then we were like, all right, we should add one more day, and then we'd probably actually be accurate,
Yeah.
You can really burn out your crew too.
True. And you never want to do that.
No, especially if these people are like just helping or working for free.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you definitely want to make sure that like you're not jam-packing something more than you shouldn't have a basic rule of thumb is like more than 4 pages that you're shooting in a day.
Yeah, I was about to say that. So it's like, that's a good thing to see. Another thing I do when looking over the script, so it's like, okay, I figured out that there are 4 scenes in the living room, and then I figure out how many pages each of those scenes are, include half pages, and oftentimes I'll go through and kind of, if it's 3.5 pages, I might even jump it to 4, just to give a little bit padding, so okay, this might take longer because that might mean more shots, and oftentimes we don't have the shot list of how many shots in a scene, so you kind of have to guesstimate and give a little bit more space than necessary. And then I look and see how many characters, so it's like, if you only have 2 characters in 2 of those scenes, and then 4 characters including those 2 characters in the other scenes of that same location, you can split it up in possibly 2 days, with the 2 characters by themselves and the 4 by there, because you don't want to have one character there for half a day, but most of their other scenes are on the other day. You want to try to put all their scenes together when they're needed, and then all the other ones.
Like, another thing you have to balance is that like paying for a cast member to be there, but also if you're having to pay for a location. So it's like, how many days do you need at this location, and is that like affecting the number of days this actor needs to be there, or vice versa? You know, it's like there's sort of a balancing act there as well.
And also take into consideration if you're filming at like a restaurant or like a cafe or something, like, you know, they're a business, so if you are filming there, it's probably on a day that they're not open, or it's a day after they close or before they open. So you just need to be really courteous to their time and their business needs, and just try to work around that.
True.
Unless you're paying them an entire day for them to close.
Right, yeah.
But that can get expensive.
Paying for the location, yeah. So what about now in terms of like hiring crew, and, you know, how early should you bring on some of those people? Because I feel like some of that stuff could maybe dictate your plans a little bit. I guess for us, it's like kind of bringing on, you know, gaffer or someone like that, you know, if someone who's going to help control the lighting and the look and stuff. If you have someone who's going to help with production design, like art department stuff, we do a lot of that stuff in-house, but if you don't have that ability, you probably want to be talking to a person like that early so they could be preparing props. Look, you know, if they're having to dress a set, that stuff could take months to collect or put together. And then if you're not shooting it yourself, if you need to hire, or say you need to hire a director, you know, if you're a producer, if you need, that's probably one of the first ones, because, you know, that person's going to really tell you a lot about the look and feel of the movie, and then they'll help you find your DP, you know, or if you're directing it, you know, you maybe that director of photography or camera operator, if maybe they're the same person, that might be the next person you want to find, because again, they're going to dictate so much of how the movie's going to look and feel, and that might be some early conversations you want to have before you get too far along and realize you guys don't have the same vision.
What about a producer? Let's say you're a director. Do you try to find a producer or unit production manager to kind of help you? Yeah. You know, so those roles would be, you know, the producer and unit production manager are the people who kind of keep the wheels rolling. So, you know, if you can find someone to fill those roles, they can help you, you know, find the rest of the crew, or, you know, figure out how to manage the budget, stuff like that.
Especially if you're more creative and less on the side of that organization, you could definitely benefit from getting a unit production manager or a producer on board early. They can help you organize all that stuff budget wise, but also just day to day.
Help you find money too.
Yeah. Exactly.
I think that's a good point though, Luke, is that kind of figure out what your strengths are, and then find people who can supplement where you're lacking, right? So if you're on the more creative side or more analytical side, you know, find someone who can kind of balance you out, and just crew that, you know, is really good at what you're asking them to do. You know, find, if you're like, I need a sound guy because I'm not really good with audio, you know, that might be an important person. You know, I don't know if they're one of the first people you get, you know, I think that would kind of be closer to the shoot, but definitely, you know, have conversations with them, give them the script, you know. That's something that sometimes we've forgotten with our sound guy, Scott, would be sending them the script late.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's there's important things there to discuss with your sound guy. Things that, like, we, you know, for us, we learned a lot because we shot this last episode of Encounters with 2 cameras, and we didn't really have enough conversations with Scott ahead of time about that, because we realized once we were on set, he couldn't do his job properly because we had 2 cameras running, a wide shot and another shot, and he couldn't get anywhere with the boom, you know, the boom pole. So it's like, that was something that we learned where we were like, okay, now we know we should definitely let him know something like that. You might need another boom operator or whatever.
Yeah. Or just don't film with 2 cameras.
Or that.
True, yeah.
I think that was it was a good idea, and like when we were talking about it and stuff, because it could speed up our film production, but we didn't really consider.
It really didn't, though.
No, it really didn't.
Yeah.
And we didn't consider like sound and like other departments having to work around that, and like lighting for like both cameras at the same. It really like ended up being a lot longer.
Yeah, and now that's for us. I mean, you might be able to do that, if you're listening to this, because we have a friend, the person who suggested it to us. He shoots with 2 cameras all the time, and it works great for him. Obviously, TV shows do it all the time. It works great for them. Now, bigger productions, I think, would do great with multiple cameras because they've got so many people to run all these other lights, all these other, they could have 2 boom operators and they could have multiple camera operators, and then you can probably zoom through pages with no problem. But yeah, I think it depends on what level you're at.
I think part of it too is obviously anything that we say on here. If you're a filmmaker, it's like, this is stuff we've learned. This is how we work. It doesn't always apply. Nothing's always like it's not law or just the rules. This is kind of how we operate, and what we've learned has worked best for us.
Yeah, and the best way to learn is just to try it yourself and see if it does work for you.
Now, let's say that I'm in pre-production and I've got my scripts and I've got a little bit of money, but I need like a coffee shop. Let's say I need a coffee shop and I don't really know what I need. Like I see one on my local square that I want to go film in for this movie. What do I do? What do I take to the coffee shop? How do I approach them about potentially filming there?
So I guess that brings us into like location scouting. So you're saying, what do you do? How do you go and approach this business and like basically ask them, convince them that that it's okay for you to film in their place of business?
Right.
Well, I think it kind of goes back to what we were saying before about that organization, like, looking like you're really organized, like, so that they know. One thing is, like, they have to know they can trust you in their place. And so if you come in and you look like a crazy person, they're not going to trust you to be like,
comb your hair.
Yeah, they're not going to be like,
take a shower that day.
Because like it really is, a lot of it is almost just that people skills, making sure you can communicate with this person. And if you can't, maybe this is a job for your like unit production manager or somebody. Maybe they should be the ones talking if you're really shy or something, So I think that's like the first thing is just that make sure you've got like a good appearance going in, and that you're really organized and you know exactly how long you need in there. Like how long are you going to ask them to either close their doors or whatever.
I think this is something too, because this just popped in my mind, but it's like you want to look presentable, but don't like overdo it too. Don't show up in a 3-piece suit.
You're in a tuxedo.
Yeah, and
sunglasses on.
Yeah, open up a briefcase. Okay, here's my location agreement. I would love for you to sign this. Just look presentable. Just obviously think about the space you're going into. Don't show up in sandals and pajama pants and a wrinkled shirt. But
now you said something. You said a magic word, a location agreement.
Yes.
Will you explain what a location agreement is?
So that is super important. I think we kind of touched on it maybe a little bit when we talked about the Sarah Jones incident. But having a location agreement is a sheet of paper, and you can find templates online that help you to, it's just something the location owners or managers sign on behalf of the location, allowing you to use their location. So it'll have in it, how many days of filming will be there, the date of the filming, how many crew members might be on there. That's a good thing to let people know too. Oftentimes they're, if I'm filming a movie, and sometimes with smaller independent, budgeted movies, their first thought is, there might be 100 people here, but you could be like, it's going to be a crew of 10 to 15, so that might make people feel a little bit better. But it's definitely the most important parts is just kind of the legal stuff, allowing you, because once they have that in writing, you have the right to film there. They've given it to you, but have the dates of filming, the location, if there's money for it, have that listed, and be willing to pay them before you get to the shoot, if
like,
possible. I think that's a good way to be professional.
It's also a release form. Like, one important thing about it is, like, later on, once you've made this movie and then someone was not so honest or whatever, and they want to, like, try to sue you saying you didn't have permission to film in there, then you have proof that you did have permission to film there. But also, just, I think too, like, when you go into a place like that, don't have like a crazy location agreement. You want to have the most simple one you can, because if someone sees this weird document, they're going to be like, I'm not signing this, or do I need a lawyer to sign this? It needs to be real basic, just saying what Brad was saying, what days you're going to be there, what times, the people who are going to be there, if you're paying for it, and basically just that they give you the right to use this place, and if you're allowed to use their logo, or what I mean, that could be an important thing. Is this place, like, are you going to have to not show certain signs or things like that? And those are just discussions you want to have with the owner of the location.
And speaking of lawyers, as you grow and get bigger, eventually get a lawyer, because a lot of as your productions get bigger and your name gets bigger, a lot of people might try to take advantage of you, or they might try to take advantage of your company. They might sue you. It's just good to have a lawyer who can write professional contracts for you to give out to anyone and everyone that's a part of this process. So you're protecting yourself, because that's the most important thing.
Yeah, and it's not a bad idea to have an LLC. Even if this is something, if you're trying to make movies on the side or whatever, just having some sort of limited liability corporation. You could just have something like that set up so that you're not as concerned about someone suing you and you being solely held responsible for those damages or things like that.
Yeah, because if you're an LLC, you're not personally liable if there is some sort of damage to the property. Like, God forbid, like, maybe like a light falls or something, breaks a window, or like the building catches on fire or something because something shorts out. If you have an LLC, you're not personally going to be liable. It's going to be the company. And it's a good rule of thumb in movies as you get bigger to make each movie itself its own company, so that movie protects the cast and crew. So it would be its own company, and you would do that for each movie you make, and then the umbrella company would be your company. And
then you can do insurance. You want to have insurance for your either you could have your, obviously, if you have a company, have insurance for that company, or insurance for the actual shoot. But that's like a whole nother can of worms there to open. But those are things if it's like a short film that you're first starting out, it's not really a big concern, But
unless as you get bigger, pyrotechnics or something.
Yeah. If you're gonna have stunts,
don't have pyrotechnics on your first movie.
That's
not a good idea.
That's probably the first rule.
Rule number one to filmmaking: don't
Matrix level people jumping off rooftops and running across it.
Tom Cruise breaking his ankle, kind of things.
Yeah.
Well, so what about? Is there anything else about location scouting that is important?
I think one thing is kind of keep in mind, not everything's going perfectly line up for your script. So be creative. You can use a space that you never would think is supposed to work, but especially starting out, use what you have and kind of adjust. We've done that a lot, and I think we've talked about it a little bit here. What were you saying, Ellis?
Oh, go ahead. You can finish.
But like for the apology service, we were at the University of North Georgia. It was a college film, and we knew a lot of those spaces kind of could fit that futuristic vibe, so we used them. Or even, a really good example of that is in that movie, The Boss's Office. It's only one glass wall that we used, but we flip the shots around, so it's like you never show the rest of the room, which looks like a normal brick wall classroom. So utilize kind of what you have at your disposal. Sunnyside Drive worked the same way, and we've talked about it on the podcast before, where we used Luke's family's lake house, even though the script said it was a suburban location. But we knew that was available and we could use it.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, just if you say that you're gonna be there for 12 hours, make sure you're only there for 12 hours. unless, and if you absolutely are going to go over, you need to be in contact with that location and make sure that it's okay that you're going to be there for an extended amount of time. But a lot of times you can be in people's homes or you can be in their businesses, and they're kind of going out of their way to help you film there. So you just need to be respectful of the times that you tell them that you're going to be there.
Yeah, and one of my notes here was just to be flexible, learn how to collaborate and compromise, and I think that's a huge thing with finding those locations, because a lot of times it won't be exactly what you pictured in the script, but it might get really close, and it might end up being even better. A lot of times those happy accidents happen, and I think going into it, if you're starting out, a good thing you could do is to, and we've said this before, but I know we'll reiterate because not everybody hears all these things, but it's like if you can write the script to fit someplace you already have, that's going to help you a lot, and then there's nothing wrong with that. It's not like you're somehow like hindering your creativity, but you can literally, like, you have this certain house, or you have a barn, or you have a backyard, or whatever, and you write that script to work in that location. And we still do it all the time. When we're pitching for clients, we're pitching for whatever, if it's for a music video, for a commercial, a lot of times it'll be like, well, we know we've got this in our back pocket, or we know we have these props in our back pocket, so we're writing the script or the outline or the lookbook, and we're using those things, those locations, and those items, so that we're not having to pay to rent more locations or pay to rent more props, and that saves us money, saves the clients money, and all around it makes it an easier process. Okay, so how about casting?
What about casting specifically?
So, all right, so I'm like, say you're a new filmmaker. I guess let's talk about this from a new filmmaker. What should they do? Maybe it's their first film, and then as you grow.
Family only.
No, put out a casting call and have auditions.
Where do you put that casting call?
Hold on. Even before then, though, say you're not even to the point of necessarily doing that.
Like character descriptions, stuff like that.
Yeah, you do need that, but I'm thinking more of like if you're in film school or something, utilizing the people around you, for one, because there's usually a lot of people who want to
be actors.
Yeah, they've had acting experience or something, and I think it's a great thing to try to include those people, collaborate with those people or whatever, because you can grow a lot of relationships, right there. Especially if you're in film school. But yeah, I agree. The casting call and all that stuff would be kind of that next step.
I would argue just because I feel like when you're in film school, you might feel like you're too small to do a casting call, and you're like, I can only use family and friends because this is just a short film. Like, you may not have the confidence to do one, but I think that you absolutely can. Like, every film that I did in college, we basically did a casting call, and we got a ton of people from Atlanta. They were super interested. We rented out a room in the school, and we held auditions for all the people that were wanting to come down, and we used different Facebook groups for actors and stuff that were in Atlanta, and we would put the casting call in those Facebook groups. Even if you don't have money, a lot of them want to come
for
practice their craft.
I agree with that totally, except for if it's like your very first film or something. I don't recommend probably trying to bring in casts like that, just because if you don't know what you're doing at all and you bring in real actors and stuff like that, I think you could easily probably ruin some relationships.
It could put you in a bad light, right?
Yeah, I think if you've never made a movie at all and it's your very first experience, it'd be smart to work with people closer around you, things like that. People who are more forgiving of what your this experience is going to be. But I totally agree that if you've got at least a couple, you've filmed a few scenes or short thing, you've at least put a few things together. Because I'm talking about real early on, real first timer stuff. Once you've had a few things under your belt, and you're still in college, you're still like you're saying, totally putting out casting calls.
Kind of being forced to use people in the acting class.
Yeah. Those are true. For your short little skits and stuff that you get assigned. But maybe for your senior capstone or
true. Yeah.
When you're in your senior year.
Yeah, and I think what you said, Ellis, there's a lot of especially we understand the Atlanta film community because, we're Georgia filmmakers. So, there's a lot of Facebook groups for that where you can put out casting calls. You can, even crew calls, if you need it. And, you're almost open to a whole network of people that just by being filmmakers in the same area you can use. And I think, probably wherever you are, throughout the country, there's probably certain hubs and cities that have Facebook groups, and you might need to search for it, but, you should be able to find other people in your area if you don't have people, that for cast or certain crew positions, that you can put it out through Facebook or, Instagram, maybe even Twitter to find other collaborators.
It's definitely a scary thing, especially if you're like introverted, because you feel more comfortable using people and like friends and family. But I think it's a step you eventually have to take. And if you're like really introverted and you just don't feel comfortable doing it, get a producer that's extroverted to do it for you.
Yeah.
And then I think once you start to make some connections, you work with some actors, you become friends with those actors. That's a huge resource, because we've found so many actors through other actors, like almost all of them. It'll be like we'll meet an actor, we work with them, they're great, and then they'll suggest someone to us, or we'll ask them if they have someone in mind that might fit a certain role. I know recently we've worked with Drama Inc. in Atlanta a lot, and those guys, they've got a huge resource there of all these actors who are coming to them, learning, taking acting classes. They're coaching them, and so Jason McDonald there, that he's been connecting us with so many different actors, and that's awesome. Like if you can find something like that where maybe there's whether you reach out to them or whether it's another.
Even, like I know in the past too, we've used actors that we've worked with, and they've gone to their talent agencies like Facebook group and put out casting calls for us. Robbie Owenby had done that a lot.
Right, like for say East Coast Talent or something like that. They'll make a post on their Facebook page or in their Facebook group, and then we'll all of a sudden we'll make like a character breakdown and all that. He'll put it out, and we'll get like 20 auditions all of a sudden. Now, can you explain a character breakdown for them?
Yeah, so a character breakdown is, again, looking at your script and figuring out what their age range is. Some determining factors, if appearance is very important, if their race is important, if not, you can keep it vague. Their personality, stuff that an actor, when looking at it, can see, and it's a short, breakdown. It's a few lines where they're like, okay, I fit in this description, and now I know what adjectives this character kind of embodies. And oftentimes it comes with a side, which is just a little piece of your script that typically is like part of a scene or a scene of that character, and it's a good one to show their use of emotion or kind of who their character is, so that they can read it, and then act it out, send in their audition tape, or like Ellis said, come and meet you for an audition, so they can, you can get a feel of how they would do in the role. They get a feel of what the character is like. Sometimes too, it's like a little breakdown, a little write-up about, it might be a sentence or something, who they are, an energetic mom who will do anything for her kids, something like that. They know exactly, who that character is. And
then you'll have like a little either synopsis or the log line of the film that they're auditioning for. And like you said, a lot of times we'll pick the scene for them to read that's the most emotional, or like whatever their character is. If they've got to have like a really intense crying, screaming scene or a really funny scene, and sometimes if we can get them to do two, that'd be great. If we can get them to do like that one and then the one over here that's the more a different side of the character, a more laid back whatever, then we can kind of see them at both ends of that spectrum.
The worst thing is getting an actor that needs to cry and they're like
right.
Some people are really good at certain roles, but they may not be the best at others, and it's not saying that they're bad actors. It's just saying that there's certain people that really fill your needs very well, you know?
There's a lot of times too, it's crazy. It's like, you know, we've had people who've done these crazy good, like amazing auditions where they had to cry. And then you get on set and you got all these cameras, you got the camera on them and all these people around, and it becomes a much more difficult process for that actor, you know. So it's really, though, at that point, it's like your job to try to get that actor in that headspace. And if that means, you know, taking a break, or if that means, you know, letting them listen to some music with headphones or whatever while they try to get into that sad, you know, mental space or whatever.
Reducing the crew, like
I was about to say that. Yeah, if you can, who can you send out of the room? Who do you not need? Who can you get out of their eye line, especially if there's people behind the camera for no reason? Get those people out of the way so that the actor's not seeing them laughing and talking while they're trying to like cry over like their dead relative in this scene or something.
Exactly. And as a crew member, so let's say you're not the director, you're just a crew member, whether that be grip, sound, whatever. The best thing you can do is to try to leave the actors and directors alone and not ask them questions so that they can work together. You should be talking, if you have an AD on set, talking to the AD, if not talking to the producer, and leaving the directors and actors alone to work together to get the emotion right and get the scene blocked, because the worst thing you can do is distract them while they're trying to get stuff done in a time crunch.
Yeah, that's probably a good point. Like the chain of command, like what is that, and how, and if, like, you know, if you're on a set, try to make sure you understand who is sort of, I guess, directly above you. Even if these are, you know, small productions for you're in college or whatever, or even high school. It's like kind of try to explain to people who they're reporting to or who's going to kind of give them direction, because it really helps to have real clear leadership in those roles.
You don't want to be a production assistant who's like, you know, that's the bottom tier of a film set, and you don't want them constantly asking the director questions.
Right.
Because, I mean, and I've been in that position, I've been the director, you know, in the leadership role, and, you know, the thing you want to have in mind is that, you know, the directors want to help you and they want to be as nice as possible, but they can't be constantly answering your questions.
They have enough going on.
Yeah, exactly. And to, as a production assistant, this is just a good rule of thumb, is, you know, you don't need to be adding your input to the cast or crew necessarily. You know, you want to kind of be respectful of the people in the authority positions, you know. And if you're like, oh, I noticed this thing, you know, someone put a coffee cup in the scene and it's in the very background and someone's not seeing it in your higher ups, talk to the person directly above you. You know, don't just announce it, or don't be talking to the cast and crew.
Yeah,
you know,
don't just yell out,
don't boss
cut
people around. Yeah.
And so, if you have a problem on set too, like let's say something detrimental happened in the sound department or something, and like, you know, you're a part of that, you're a PA or something, don't go inform everyone and like freak everyone out and create like this anxiety. Just pull one person off to the side that's your higher up and talk to them and figure out that situation so everyone else can continue working and getting set up and doing what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because if you can solve the problem without having to go to like the top of the, you know, people, the director or whoever, then that'll be great. Then they're not having to worry about that small issue that's while they're also trying to plan the next shot or whatever.
Don't freak your crew out when they're locked inside a
jail.
Dude.
Yeah. I was gonna say though, the thing about not like kind of speaking, I guess, you know, out of turn or whatever, but that's a good point, because you got to understand if you just showed up to set today and you've like, this is your first experience, and I'm not saying first experience on a set, but I'm saying this is your first time hearing what this story even is, you got to know that the director, whoever else is on set, if it's the producer and the DP and whatever, they've been working probably for months to get to this point and have a really clear understanding of the story and what they're looking for from the actor or whatever. So if you're giving, you know, your opinion on something, that's coming from like a place of it's not an educated place you're coming from, because you don't know what you don't know where you're even at in the movie. Yeah. You know, you don't know where this happens. You don't know if this is the climax, whereas they have a clear understanding of what they need. You know. Mm-hmm.
And that's to everyone on set. The directors are the ones that are working with the actors. Even if you're like a cam op or something, you shouldn't be giving direction to the actors, because then it's going to be unclear to them who they're supposed to listen to. It just needs to be coming from the director or directors. And maybe there's a coffee cup in the scene and you're worried about it, but you definitely need to ask the person who's in charge of you first, because maybe it's supposed to intentionally be there, you know? Maybe it's part of set deck. You don't know.
Yeah, they move it and then messes up continuity.
Exactly. So you always just want to make sure you're talking to your higher up instead of just announcing it, or like, you know, going to like the highest in command and talking to them. And
True. So this is another place where you are going to need contracts and release forms. So for actors, for the casting and stuff, you can find that stuff online easily too. Again, they can be pretty basic, but it's pretty much like you're wanting to get, you know, have the date on there that you need that actor there, how much you're paying that actor, and then the release of their likeness, you know, the release of their voice, all that, so that you have permission to edit this person into your movie.
And if you're not paying the person, have it stated that, you know, they're not being paid on it. And yeah, starting out, especially on really, really early, you know, independent shoots, you know, a lot of people go into it understanding they might not be paid, you know, crew, cast-wise. So, you know, have it be stated so they don't later go, hey, I thought you were supposed to pay me $100 for this.
Right.
Another thing, and again, to reiterate what we were talking about, I think, you know, you want to keep all these contracts a page to a page and a half at most. You know, people don't want to, same as location, people who own locations, your cast and crew don't want to have to read 9-page documents just to work on your short film. You know, they want to look at something and go, okay, I know everything I need to know from this. You know, and like I said, online templates are your friends, you know, and you can take them, rework them a little bit to fit your script, fit your production, and then, you know, send it their way. You know, that's what a lot of people have done.
You can also pay a lawyer like a one-time fee to write you up something like that, and then you'll have one that's you can use all the time, that's a professionally made contract for you and your business, and you just change the name of the project each time on it. And
yeah. No, if you're no budget though and you don't have the money,
online's your friend.
Taking some templates and working from that.
Yeah. So, what about the benefits of a table read or rehearsal with the cast?
I hate them. No, I'm kidding.
we really haven't done it a lot, you know.
No, yeah. Trying to think. You know, Sunny side, I don't think we did that. We had a couple of days of rehearsal with a few crew members for the apology service. Yeah, I mean, I remember 1 day of rehearsals for the fart formula.
And Ryan, I remember we did some rehearsals for the apology service. Of course, then it ended up being that our cast changed from that point. So it's like you really got to roll with the punches when you're making movies. But I mean, we did rehearsals with 2 actors, and then one of those actors ended up falling off of the shoot. So it's like we had to replace that actor. So really, that rehearsal, I mean, I guess the actor that stayed got a little bit out of it, but and we did do some test shots that day, but still, it's like at that point you just got to be ready to be flexible, you know.
Yeah, man, that's the thing too. Like anything on set can change, you know. You know, don't hire a bunch of people who are all dating each other, and there's the potential of people to break up. But that's just life, and like Luke said, you gotta roll with the punches.
Also, whenever you're bigger, it's probably smart to start hiring people that have experience. Like, don't just keep hiring your friends or people that have never worked on a set before, because if you get someone that's totally brand new, they're gonna be more of a hindrance to you. Like, everyone wants to get on their first set and have experience, but they need to do that in like film school on like small projects. When you're starting to be more professional, it needs to be
true
people that
we've
have
had that
experience
before. But yeah, I think rehearsals are really good, you know, to walk through. Table reads, if it's a dialogue heavy script, we did that for the new episode of Encounters, which was probably our worthiest script we've had, probably since the apology service, if not even worthier than that. But I think that helped because it gave people understanding of kind of the nuances of the script and like what were the undertones of what, you know, some things are being said, but it really, there's more to it than just the words on the page. So that helped a lot. But I think too, if you have the opportunity to be in the location and practice blocking with your actors before the day you get to script, you know, anytime you can have a rehearsal, the better, because then they understand, you know, the camera side of things, they understand where they need to be blocking wise, you know, the movement they're making in the shot. Anything like that is just so helpful and just gives you more time where you're not having to spend time on your day of set, especially if you have limited access in time wise to a location. It just gives you more time to get what you need and not having to be, you know, spending it learning and figuring all that out while you're there.
I think too, like with, I guess, you know, with the table read, we were able to give a few notes, a little bit of feedback, and there may be some little things that the actor had a totally different understanding of what you meant to say in the script or something, and you can kind of correct that then early on, where they're like, oh, I totally thought the character meant something else. So that way, when you get to set,
they were supposed to be speaking Spanish.
Yeah, when you get to set, they're not like, hola, ¿cómo está? So, but you know, also I think it's cool because people can get to know each other a little bit. Your cast. Yeah, like we you know, we or whoever you are, the director or whatever, you get to know your cast a little bit because a lot of times you're not really meeting these people until you get to the set. And even if say you can't do a table read, and I know, like, I remember with the apology service, I know I did a lot of like phone calls ahead of time with those actors and stuff, and I think that helped just sort of like setting people at ease, you know.
And we've done that for pretty much every project since. Yeah,
if you can do a Zoom or a FaceTime thing or something, kind of spend a little time with them, and then if not, and then if you can get them all together. You guys do a table read, or like you said, Brad, everybody get together and do a actual rehearsal of the scene. And especially if someone has to be like really intimate in the shot, or if it's like someone's playing whether it's boyfriend or girlfriend, or whether it's like a mom and a son, it's like getting those people so they can
I was gonna say that
have like a connection, right?
Because acting's like a super intimate job. You have to be really in tune with your emotions, and it's a good icebreaker for the actors to meet each other that are going to be acting with each other, because once they get to know each other a little better, they can really start to like work off of each other and feel more comfortable working with each other, and especially like you said, if it's like a relationship or something.
I think the audience can tell if it's not if it doesn't feel right, you know,
the chemistry.
Chemistry is so important, and you know, sometimes people and actors are really good at just forming that chemistry, you know, really quickly, even if you don't have a day of rehearsal. But you know, oftentimes just that little bit of time, even just a couple of hours of them just hanging out, talking through scenes, practicing, you know, lines together just on their own, you know, it just builds that chemistry just a little bit more, to the point where you can tell just the payoff once they get to, you know, be on set or be on camera.
That's another thing that we didn't mention, but sometimes you will do like a chemistry test with like two actors, you know, like an on-screen chemistry test. So you don't know necessarily, like maybe this one actor is definitely in the movie, you've cast them, but you don't know who their counterpart is going to be yet. So you have them read with 2 or 3 other actors so that you see which one are they connecting with, you know?
Oh, what about, this is just more kind of side story, but you were talking about you cast one actor already. You know, oftentimes on our shoots we might have someone in mind, you know, now that we've worked with a lot of people and we're like, oh, this person would fit perfectly for this. But I was thinking about for episode 1 of Encounters, you know, we already had Grady Port, and then we had to cast, you know, the mom and dad, and then Eli's sister, you know, Annie in the movie. So we had worked with Isabella on a music video before. She played the sister, but so we had these 2 child actors, and then we're having to do auditions and figure out the mom and the dad for it. And I remember, you know, me and you, Luke, we were at the Macon Film Festival, and staying at my Aunt Doreen's house, and we were looking at, you know, all these actors, kind of took their headshots, pieced them together, and we're like, does this look like a family? You know, because we weren't just going off of their, you know, how good, you know, you take how good their auditions are, but then you're kind of having to look and go, does this look believable?
Yeah.
Would the audience just even visually think, oh, these people are a family?
Yeah, do they favor? Because, man, sometimes movies, the casting director or whoever, it's like they do such an amazing job of putting these people together that you would swear that person was that person's mom or dad, because they'll have the same eyes or whatever. And then, you know, sometimes it's done poorly in movies. Like you'll see like a terrible flashback and a younger version of that character is being played, and it doesn't look like them at all. It looks
totally different.
But sometimes, man, they get it so spot on that you're just like, wow, you would swear they're actually related.
Yeah. It's crazy.
So here's one more question. It's a little uncomfortable. How do you handle someone that is being either inappropriate on set or they're causing a hindrance? How do you effectively fire that person or take them off of the shoot without causing a scene? Like, how do you approach that?
You don't hire them to begin with. I mean, I guess you do try to avoid that if you can vet the person at all, somehow, but inevitably things will happen. So I don't know. I mean, here's a question. It's like, I guess it depends on what's happening, what they're doing, if it's really inappropriate, obviously you're going to just have to fire that person. But
yeah, and I think that's a conversation for either the director or the producer with them, you know, individually. Don't just go, hey, man, you know, everyone's setting stuff up and you're like, hey, man, you're fired. Get out. You're
fired.
You're out of here. Okay, so what if they're acting, though, and they've been in, like, one of your scenes for a day, but then, like, they're being super inappropriate and you got to get rid of them?
That's luckily a problem we haven't faced, so I don't know any firsthand experience on that.
And also it's like it's going to depend heavily on what's happening, but is it something where you can give them, you know, a warning? Basically, it's like you communicate to them, make sure they understand what you're doing is, you know, inappropriate, whatever, right? Maybe they don't understand. Maybe they can't read the room and they're saying really crazy stuff. You know what I mean? You communicate that to them first. Then it's like if they continue to do it, then you have to address it from there. Like, do you have to take more drastic measures and like actually let the person go? If they're in the scenes previously, man, it's like, I don't know. It's like, do you have to reshoot those scenes because this person is completely impossible to work with? Or is it something where you have to push through? I don't know. I think it'd be a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah,
softball questions only, Ellis.
Or you fire them and then you play the role yourself. Director cameo.
Look, we're hard-hitting questions here. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So
any other crash course film school questions?
That's most of the stuff that I had here, but I was going to say this is one thing we've had to kind of learn how to do. This is for more documentary type stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You know, for if you're doing, we called them docu promos. We're making promotional films for our clients that are documentary style. And a lot of times that means interviewing those people, and they may be people who've never been on camera before in their life. So, you know, your goal obviously is to like find people who are comfortable on camera, but if you can't, you know, it's like you got to do your best to make that person comfortable. And that may mean like spending more time with them, or maybe like that day of filming, say you're filming B-roll footage of the client, maybe it's like, maybe you start with that. You're like, we'll film the B-roll of you. They get comfortable with you walking around filming them half the day. And then at the end, you set up, you get everything set up, you get them comfortable, you let them sit there, and then just chat for a little while. You know, get them in the chair early, and then let you guys just chat while the other people are setting up. Get the shot framed up, and then that person is comfortable talking to the person across from them, whoever's asking them the questions. And they're not just all of a sudden you throw them a question and they just freeze.
That's something that Brad does really well when we're setting up, is because like a lot of times people will just ask a question and they're not comfortable, so they just give a really closed off answer.
They just go, yes.
Yeah, they're like,
yeah,
I do that.
That's what you hate getting in the interviews for that is like a yes/no question. Always ask like how or why do you do this? Stuff that they just can't answer with a yes or a no.
Yeah. And if they have, like, let's say that you asked them a question and then they mentioned something in their response, you can elaborate and ask them a question from that response that maybe wasn't one of your original questions to dig a little deeper and kind of like pull more out of what they're saying.
Yeah, almost phrase your question more like, tell us about when you blah, blah, you know what I mean? Something like that, as opposed to like, do you think it's beneficial for people to do this? You know, and then they're just like, yeah, this is definitely beneficial.
Yeah. That I think that was kind of like a learning process with the interviews, is that you kind of want to phrase the questions in a way that opens them up to answering them in bigger sentences. You also kind of want them to rephrase the question, you know, so either ask it or before even starting, you know, be like, hey, if you don't mind, you know, just saying, you know, some of the keywords that we mentioned in this question. You know, so it's like why do you know, shop at, you know, this store? Well, I shop at this store because, you know.
And like explain to them that your voice is going to be cut out. The questions will be cut, unless it's the type of interview where you are going to hear the interviewer. But explain to them your interview is going to be cut out, and all the audience will hear is what they have to say. So that's the reason for kind of restating the question.
And pre-production wise for these docu promos, it's, you know, we do a lot of kind of same thing as with narrative movies. You know, you do research to figure out, okay, this is what the location, maybe you go visit the business, see what their day-to-day is like. And so you're understanding what the shots will look like, but also understand what questions to ask. Do research on their website, you know, have a preliminary, you know, phone call with them, and, you know, get to kind of understand their story, what they're all about. That way you can, you know, take all that, you know, and even if you need to, you know, record those interviews with them beforehand, so you can say, hey, you know, is it okay if I record this so we make notes from it later? You know, you record it, listen to it back, you're writing questions. And yeah, like Ellis said, you know, something I try to do is, you know, I write all my questions down. I try to look over them, you know, a day or two before, have them kind of memorized, but I also can use my note cards to work off of. But, you know, if someone brings up something that maybe we didn't do the research about or even think about, you know, in the question, but it kind of fits with the narrative of their business or what they're all about, you know, it's easy to deviate off course and then jump back to the questions you already had. You know,
so you're saying like be ready to follow that train of thought with them.
Yeah, because I mean, especially if someone brings it up, that's what they want to talk about, right?
Yeah,
you know,
they're super passionate about that.
Them, yeah. So, you know, always be willing to follow what they're passionate about, and, you know, adjust. You know, if you can tell, you know, really wordy questions are kind of difficult for them to understand, you know, adjust it. You know, always be fluid in the way you're interviewing someone, because, you know, you ultimately, it doesn't matter. You know, I could have, you know, 10-word questions, you know, written out and be super prepared for that. But if that doesn't work for that person that you're interviewing, like, that's so essential to fitting what you can get the best footage and the best way of showing their personality, them answering the questions, them just being, you know, passionate about what they're talking about. You know, don't try to fit them into the mold that you've already prepared in your mind, because sometimes it won't be like that at all.
Yeah. Cool. So we are about an hour and 10 minutes in, according to GarageBand. So I'm wondering if maybe we should save some of the other stuff we were going to talk about for the next one.
Yeah, I mean, that's
we could open with the next podcast.
This was a pretty serious, I feel like, crash course into filmmaking.
This is a super informative podcast episode.
Yeah, we went deep this time. Also, but Brad, first of all, I wanted to ask, why do you have a bowling pin?
A bowling pin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to say my 18th birthday. So if you don't know, I'm recording from my parents' house in Trenton, Georgia. I've been up here since quarantine happened. So
if you're watching this, if this is the future when you're watching this, it's because we were recording this during the pandemic in 2020.
But anyway, for my 18th birthday, I decided, since a lot of my friends from high school, my friend group, we would be going off to college. We wouldn't be getting to see each other all that much. So my senior year, I had a birthday where all my friends got together and we went to a bowling alley close by, and we
stole a bowling pin.
And that was just kind of the birthday get together, and the place we went to gave me a bowling pin, so I think it says like happy birthday on it.
Oh, that's cool.
I was hoping that it was more of like you went back behind the bowling thing and like stole a pin or something.
It was
no.
It was a coming of age experience.
It's a legit bowling pin, so I guess if you went, how many bowling pins make up like a normal? Is it 10? So
9,
it's like
10?
If you had 10 birthdays or so, or you could have a full set.
Oh, you could probably buy like a full set for like $20.
Yeah, but then you don't have the memories of
That's true.
having your birthday at a bowling alley.
It's about the memories, Ellis.
I buy my memories.
All right, guys. What do you say we wrap this up?
Sounds
All right.
good. It's almost lunchtime, so
I know.
I'm
Hey, let's tell everybody, you guys, be sure to subscribe on YouTube. We've been kind of gradually growing. We're at like 548 now. I think I was checking last night. So
really, that's
we'd
nice.
we'd love it if you guys would subscribe. Tell your friends about the podcast. If you listen on Spotify
Apple
or whatever.
Podcasts.
There's a lot of places to listen. You can send us in, and this would be great during this time. You can send in an audio message to us. So especially if you listen to us pretty regularly, it would be really cool if you let us know. Send in a little audio message so we can respond to you or play it. We'll play it during the show and maybe respond. Like, say you have a question. It doesn't even have to be film related. It can be whatever. But that'd be a really cool way for us to kind of connect with you guys while we're all quarantined.
Totally.
All right, guys. Well, we'll see you next time.
Yeah, good chat.
All right. See you next time.
Bye.